Hello and welcome to Bounty and Comics. My name is John Trent. I'm the founder and editor-in-chief at Bounty and Comics. Instead, I got a story about Star Wars and Star Wars creator George Lucas and his reason why he really sold Lucasfilm and Star Wars. So Star Wars creator and film icon George Lucas recently revealed why he really sold Star Wars and Lucasfilm in a newly published interview in the Star Wars Archives book by Paul Duncan. First reported by Ichibaka at Disney Star Wars is Dumb, Lucas details that his real reasons for selling Lucasfilm in 2012 were his commitments to his family and his desire to build a museum. Lucas tells Paul Duncan, quote, "At that time, I was starting the next trilogy. I talked to the actors, and I was starting to gear up. I was also about to have a daughter with my wife. It takes 10 years to make a trilogy. Episodes 1 to 3 took from 1995 to 2005. Lucas continued, "I'd still be working on episode 9. In 2012, I was 69. So the question was, am I going to keep doing this the rest of my life? Do I want to go through this again? Finally, I decided I'd rather raise my daughter and enjoy life for a while. I could have not sold Lucasfilm and gotten somebody to run the productions, but that isn't retiring. On The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, I tried to stay out of the way, but I couldn't. I was there every day." He then went on to say, "Even though the people were friends of mine and they did great work, it wasn't the same as me doing it. It was like being once removed. I knew that probably wouldn't work again, that I'd be frustrated." He then went on to detail his work habits, saying, "I'm one of those micromanager guys and I can't help it. So I figured I would forego that, enjoy what I had, and I was looking forward to raising my daughter." He then says that he wanted to build his museum, saying, "Also, I wanted to build a museum, which I'd always wanted to do, so I was thinking if I don't do this now, I'll never get that done." He then would say how painful it was to sell Star Wars. He says, "I spent my life creating Star Wars, 40 years, and giving it up was very, very painful, but it was the right thing to do." Finally, Lucas would kind of say what we've all known, that Disney did not use his original vision for the sequel trilogy. He says, "I thought I was going to have a little bit more to say about the next 3 because I'd already started them, but they decided they wanted to do something else. Things don't always work the way you want it. Life is like that." So there you have it. That's what George Lucas says about why he sold Star Wars. I do want to point out why this is kind of important. It kind of rebuts this narrative that we're kind of seeing from some of these Disney and Lucasfilm employees, specifically Pablo Hidalgo in his Star Wars Fascinating Facts book, where he seems to imply, or actually he actually claims that some of the sequel trilogy was based off of Lucas's treatments. Lucas is pretty clear that they went in a different direction. That's what he says. But Pablo Hidalgo in the Star Wars Fascinating Facts book made multiple claims that the sequel trilogy had a lot of stuff from Lucas's treatments. On one of the pages titled Luke Skywalker's Destiny, it reads, "Years before The Last Jedi began development, the treatment left behind by George Lucas in 2012 also had Episode 8 be the one wherein Luke Skywalker would die." In another page titled AKA Rey, it reads, "The Force Awakens' long journey from idea to finished film was filled with evolution, but one idea that remained constant from the start was that of a young woman's quest to become a Jedi Knight. In George Lucas's original outline, she was a 14-year-old girl named Taryn. In his subsequent iterations, she would briefly be named Thea, and believe it or not, Winky. When writer-director J.J. Abrams came aboard, he simplified the names to placeholders." He then went on to say, "Kylo Ren was Jedi Killer, Thea became Sally, Finn was called Harry, and the character that would be Poe was John Doe. As the film neared production, Sally became Kira, which stuck as a production codename, then Echo, and finally Rey." However, Lucas makes it clear that Disney decided they wanted to do something else. That's what he said. So that kind of rebuts Hidalgo's claim here that they were actually using his treatment in the sequel trilogies. In fact, Lucas had previously detailed to James Cameron that he aimed to explore a microbiotic world and more of the wills. So he said the next 3 Star Wars films were going to get into a microbiotic world, but there's this world of creatures that operate differently than we do. I call them the wills, and the wills are the ones who actually control the universe. They feed off the Force. Back in the day, I used to say ultimately What this means is we were just cars, vehicles for the Wills to travel around in. We're vessels for them, and the conduit is the midichlorians. The midichlorians are the ones that communicate with the Wills. The Wills, in a general sense, they are the Force. Also in this Star Wars archive book, he would actually detail more of his sequel trilogy plans, which included Darth Maul and Darth Talon, Luke rebuilding the Jedi Order from the survivors of Order 66, and Leia forming the New Republic. None of that happened in the sequel trilogy, so I think it's pretty clear that Lucas definitely had different ideas than what we got from Disney. And then not only has Lucas kind of rebutted it, but there's a whole list of other people. Mark Hamill said in 2018, I happen to know that George didn't kill Luke until the end of episode 9 after he trained Leia, which is another thread that was never played upon in The Last Jedi. He also revealed that Lucas had written an overall arc for the trilogy, something Disney did not do. Hamill said George had an overall arc. If he didn't have all the details, he had sort of an overall feel for where the sequel trilogy was going. But this one's more like a relay race. You run and hand the torch off to the next guy, he picks it up and goes. Ryan didn't write what happens in 9. He was going to hand it off to originally Colin Trevorrow, and now JJ. It's an ever-evolving, living, breathing thing. Whoever's on board gets to play with the life-size action figures that we all are. We can confirm that the statements that Hamill talking about Colin Trevorrow is true, because we've seen the concept art for Trevorrow's vision, and I think there's a script that's been going around as well, vastly different from what we saw in The Rise of Skywalker. So Lucas wasn't the only one to claim that Disney went a different direction from his original ideas. Former Disney CEO and current chairman Bob Iger also revealed that George felt betrayed by Disney because they didn't use his original treatment. Iger wrote in his memoir, The Ride of a Lifetime, Lessons Learned from 15 Years as CEO of the Walt Disney Company. George immediately got upset as they began to describe the plot, and it dawned on him that we weren't using one of the stories he submitted during the negotiations. George knew we weren't contractually bound to anything, but he thought that our buying the story treatments was a tacit promise that we follow them, and he was disappointed that his story was being discarded. Iger went on to say, I'd been so careful since our first conversation not to mislead him in any way, and I didn't think I had now, but I could have handled it better. George felt betrayed, and while this whole process would never have been easy for him, we'd gotten off to an unnecessarily rocky start. So even Bob Iger is saying that they discarded Lucas's treatments and did not use them. So I don't understand why Hidalgo is still trying to push this narrative when you have Hamill saying it, Lucas saying it, Bob Iger saying it, and guess what? Even J.J. Abrams contradicts Hidalgo's claim. So Abrams detailed in 2015, and he said, I came on board and Disney had already decided they didn't want to go that direction. He's talking about Lucas's treatments. And then he went on to say, so the mandate was to start from scratch and tell a story that was the continuum. And Kathleen Kennedy brought on Larry Kasdan and Michael Arndt, and it was those people I began working with. So even J.J. Abrams said that they didn't use Lucas's treatment, and the mandate was to start from scratch. So Hidalgo's claims just seemed utterly absurd, but we do get some really interesting information from George Lucas explaining why he sold Star Wars, and I think those are legit reasons. I think wanting to raise your daughter and then pursuing another life goal that you have of building a museum, I think those are worthy reasons to sell Star Wars, because he wanted to commit to raising his daughter and commit to the museum, whereas, as he says, if he didn't, he would still be like always trying to micromanage what was happening, because that's just kind of, he admits that's just who he is. And we know that he still loves Star Wars. We've seen him with photos on the set of The Mandalorian. So he still is, seems to be at least somewhat involved in the periphery. It's unclear how much he's involved in. But he is somewhat still involved. But he obviously isn't as involved as what he would be if he still owned it. But that's what George Lucas has to say. Let me know what you think. Leave a comment below. My name is John Trent, and you've been watching Bounding into Comics. I'll have another video for you tomorrow.